Will by Will Smith, the man behind the legend. Before he was a Hollywood superstar, a Grammy-winning rapper, or a global icon, Will Smith was just a kid from West Philadelphia. A kid with big dreams, a complicated family, and a relentless drive to prove himself. But dreams alone weren't enough. His childhood was shaped by a strict and sometimes volatile father, a deep-seated fear of failure, and an unshakable desire to entertain, impress, and above all, be loved. His rise to fame wasn't a straight shot to the top. From his early rap career as the Fresh Prince to his financial downfall and reinvention as a sitcom star, every success came with lessons. And every failure forced him to confront parts of himself he tried to outrun. He mastered the art of performance both on screen and in life. But behind the charm and confidence, there was a man struggling to understand himself. A man battling fear, insecurity, and the crushing weight of expectations. Beyond the smile, Will Smith is known for his infectious energy, megawatt smile, and larger-than-life charisma. He's the man who made us laugh in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, stunned us in Ali, and made history with Men in Black, Independence Day, and The Pursuit of Happiness. But behind the box office hits, Grammy wins, and motivational speeches, there's another Will Smith, one the cameras never captured. In his memoir, he pulls back the curtain on the man behind the persona. This is not just a story of fame and success. It's a raw, deeply introspective journey of a man who spent decades trying to outrun his fears, control everything around him, and live up to impossible expectations. It's about the childhood that shaped him, the sacrifices he made, and the painful lessons that finally set him free. More than an autobiography, Will is a blueprint for transformation. It's about the power of self-awareness, the cost of perfectionism, and the courage to break free from the roles we play. Whether you admire him, envy him, or think you already know him, this book will show you a Will Smith you've never seen before. Welcome to the real story of Will Smith, the untold story of Will Smith. Chapter 1, The Blueprint. A boy named Willard. Before the fame, before the millions, and before the red carpet premieres, Will Smith was just Willard Carroll Smith Jr., a skinny, wide-eyed kid from West Philadelphia, with a love for words, a knack for making people laugh, and a deep, simmering need to prove himself. His father, Willard Sr., better known as Daddy-O, was a force of nature, strict, intense, and relentless in his pursuit of discipline. He ran his household like a military base, believing that toughness built character. His mother, Caroline, was the perfect counterbalance, a school board employee who valued education, structure, and quiet resilience. Together, they shaped young Will's worldview. Intelligence was expected, discipline was non-negotiable, and failure was never an excuse. The brick wall lesson. One of the most defining moments of Will's childhood wasn't a grand event. It wasn't a victory or a celebration. It was a wall, a literal brick wall. When Will was 11, Daddy-O took him and his younger brother, Harry, outside the family shop and pointed at an empty patch of ground. Then he handed them bricks. Their task? Build a wall. Not a small fence, not a decorative garden piece, a real wall. Day after day, under the scorching sun, he worked, mixing mortar, laying bricks, scraping off excess cement. Some days felt endless. Their hands were raw, their muscles ached, and frustration boiled over. At one point, young Will, exhausted and overwhelmed, complained, "This is impossible. We'll never finish this." Daddy never want to tolerate weakness, shut him down with a lesson that will shape Will's entire approach to life. Stop thinking about the damn wall. Just focus on laying one perfect brick, one at a time. If you lay each brick with care, the wall will take care of itself. And so, brick by brick, the impossible became possible. Months later, the wall was complete. But it wasn't just a wall. It was a mindset, a philosophy, a lesson that will echo through every challenge Will faced, the blueprint for success. Will carried this lesson far beyond the construction site. He realized success wasn't about giant leaps. It was about consistent, deliberate action. One joke at a time, one performance at a time, one challenge at a time. Whether it was learning to navigate Hollywood, overcoming financial troubles, or rebuilding after personal failures, the principle remained the same. Don't focus on the overwhelming task. Just lay one perfect brick. This wasn't just a childhood story. It was the blueprint for his entire life. Success is never about talent alone. It's about discipline, consistency, and the ability to keep going even when it feels impossible. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, don't focus on the whole task. Ask yourself, what's the next brick I can lay right now? Chapter 2. From Prince to King, the birth of a star. Will Smith was born with a gift, the ability to command a room, to make people laugh, to turn any tense situation into entertainment. But underneath the charm, the quick wit, and the larger-than-life personality, there was a fear, a deep, gnawing fear of disappointing people, especially his father. Growing up under Daddy-O's strict and sometimes explosive rule, Will quickly learned that laughter could be a shield. If he could crack a joke at just the right moment, he could diffuse tension, avoid conflict, and win approval. It wasn't just about being funny. It was about survival, the birth of the Fresh Prince. That need to entertain led him to hip-hop, a genre that was exploding in the 1980s. But while most rappers were embracing raw, edgy, and aggressive lyrics, Will took a different route. He saw music as an extension of his personality, fun, playful, and filled with humor. He teamed up with DJ Jazzy Jeff, his best friend and musical partner, and together, they created a sound that stood out. Unlike the gangsta rap dominating the scene, their music was clean, upbeat, and parent-approved, perfect for radio. Their breakout hit, "Parents Just Don't Understand," wasn't just a song, it was a phenomenon, a new kind of hip-hop that parents didn't mind, and kids absolutely loved. Then at just 20 years old, Will Smith stood on stage at the Grammy Awards, holding a trophy for Best Rap Performance, the first ever Grammy given in that category. Will had made it. Fame, money, success. He was officially a star. And then, almost as quickly as he rose, it all came crashing down. Will, caught up in the whirlwind of success, spent money like it would never run out. Cars, jewelry, clothes, parties. He was living the dream until the IRS came knocking. He had failed to pay his taxes, and the government wasn't about to let that slide. Debt, $2.8 million. Everything he owned, gone. broke with nowhere to turn. Just like that, the Fresh Prince went from Grammy winner to financially ruined. A turning point, Hollywood calls. Broke and desperate, Will found himself in Los Angeles searching for his next move. One night, he met Benny Medina, a music executive with a wild idea. What if we turned your life into a TV show? At first, Will laughed. He wasn't an actor, but Medina was serious. He introduced Will to legendary producer Quincy Jones, and within days, Will found himself at a party, being handed a script for a new sitcom. Quincy, never one for wasting time, insisted Will audition right then and there, in the middle of a packed room. No preparation, no second chances. Will had 10 minutes to prove he was ready. And so he performed. He channeled every ounce of his charisma, every lesson from years of making people laugh, every survival instinct that had kept him going. By the end, Quincy turned to the executives and said, "Sign him." And just like that, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was born. The lesson? Success can disappear overnight. Will's rise and fall taught him a brutal truth. 1. Fame and fortune mean nothing if you don't know how to manage them. 2. Talent can get you there, but discipline keeps you there. 3. Money comes fast, but it goes even faster if you're not careful. 4. Failure isn't the end. It's just a setup for your next big opportunity. So the next time you face a setback, ask yourself, is this the end? Or is it just the beginning of my next chapter? That's Will's story. Chapter 3. Broke and broken, the fall before the rise. Success had come fast, but so had the fall. Will had everything. Money, fame, a Grammy, but he didn't know how to manage any of it. He spent recklessly, treating his bank account like an endless well. Cars, jewelry, parties, designer clothes. If he wanted it, he bought it. What he didn't buy, he gave away. But while he was busy enjoying the life of a superstar, one thing went unnoticed: his taxes. The IRS, however, noticed, and they came for everything. The moment he had once dreamed of, being young, rich, and famous, turned into a nightmare. In a matter of months, Will found himself flat broke. No money, no assets, no backup plan. The government seized everything he owned, and suddenly the Fresh Prince wasn't fresh anymore. He was drowning. He had gone from a Grammy-winning rapper to a cautionary tale, a has-been, before he had even turned 21. It was the lowest point of his life, and desperation set in. The humiliation of being on top one moment and crashing the next made him question everything. But just when it seemed like the world had closed its doors, one opened. A chance meeting in Los Angeles led him to Quincy Jones, a music and film mogul with an idea, a sitcom based on Will's life. It was risky, unconventional, and completely out of his comfort zone. Will wasn't an actor. He had never taken a class, never memorized a script, never stood in front of a camera to play someone other than himself. But Will had something more powerful than experience. He had survival instincts. He had spent his whole life adapting, performing, making people laugh to avoid conflict. Acting, he realized, wasn't that different. He faked confidence where there was none, threw himself into learning the craft, and took the opportunity like it was the last lifeline he had. In 1990, against all odds, Will Smith became the lead in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. The show was an instant hit, turning him into a household name. His charisma, comedic timing, and sheer presence made him one of the most beloved figures on television. Practically overnight, he went from being a broke, washed up rapper to the face of one of the most iconic sitcoms of all time. The lesson was clear. Life can take everything from you in an instant. But if you stay ready, if you stay willing to evolve, that one opportunity can change everything. Will had lost millions, but in the process, he gained something more valuable: the understanding that resilience, not talent, is what makes a star. Chapter 4: Hollywood Hustle, the making of a movie star. TV had made him famous, but fame wasn't enough. Will wasn't satisfied with just being the funny guy from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He wanted to be a global icon, and that meant cracking the biggest industry of them all, Hollywood. But unlike music and television, where his talent and charm had carried him through, movies required something more: strategy. Instead of jumping at every script that came his way, Will took a scientific approach. He studied success. He dissected box office numbers, analyzed audience preferences, and broke down the elements that made a film a global phenomenon. He found patterns. Movies with aliens, action, and universal emotions were the ones that dominated. People wanted spectacle, adventure, and stories that resonated across cultures. So he played the long game. He turned down smaller roles and targeted only movies designed to be blockbusters. His choices were precise: Independence Day, Men in Black, Bad Boys, one after the other. They became massive hits. With each success, his influence grew. He wasn't just acting, he was building a brand, one that could carry a movie to $1 billion payday. But behind the confidence and the calculated moves, there was pressure, an immense suffocating weight. When you become the biggest movie star in the world, failure is not an option. The stakes were higher, the expectations heavier. Every role had to be bigger, every performance sharper. There was no room for mistakes. Yet, Will thrived under the pressure. He wasn't just playing characters on screen, he was playing the game of Hollywood, and he was winning. The lesson? Success isn't just about talent. It's about preparation, strategy, and making the right moves at the right time. Will wasn't waiting for luck, he was engineering his own destiny. Chapter 5: The Price of Perfection, the Dark Side of Success. At the peak of his career, Will Smith had everything: money, power, global fame, and a family that looked picture perfect. He had cracked the Hollywood code, becoming one of the most bankable stars on the planet. Every movie he touched turned to gold. Every performance was praised, and every room he walked into was filled with admiration. But behind closed doors, Will was suffocating under the weight of his own success. The same relentless drive that had made him unstoppable was now making him impossible to live with, to love, to be around. He had spent his entire life obsessed with control. Control over his image, his career, his public perception, and eventually his family. His wife, Jada, wasn't just his partner. She was part of the Will Smith empire, and he expected her to play her role perfectly. His children, Jaden and Willow, were not just kids. They were reflections of his legacy. He threw lavish birthday parties, planned extravagant surprises, and built a life most people could only dream of. He was crafting what he thought was the perfect family, the same way he had crafted the perfect career. But perfection is a mirage, a shimmering illusion that disappears the moment you try to hold on to it. Jada, fiercely independent, felt trapped. His children, growing up under the shadow of a man who seemed larger than life, began to rebel. Will couldn't understand it. Why weren't they happy? Why didn't they see how hard he was trying? It wasn't until one painful moment, Jada's breaking point, that everything came crashing down. She told him, with raw honesty, that she felt like she was living in a movie he was directing, not in a marriage. That no matter how much he achieved, no matter how much he tried to orchestrate happiness for others, it would never work because happiness is an inside job. You can't make someone happy. You can only choose to be happy yourself. This was his words. That realization shattered everything he thought he knew. Success had always been about pushing harder, working more, winning at all costs. But now, for the first time, Will had to learn the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes, the only way to win is to let go. Let go of the need to control, let go of the fear of failure, let go of the idea that love can be built like a blockbuster with a script, special effects, and a grand finale. Because life isn't a movie, and real happiness, it doesn't need an audience. Chapter 6: Redefining Success. Finding Freedom. For most of his life, Will Smith had been running, chasing greatness, chasing approval, chasing an impossible standard of perfection. Every move he made was calculated for success. Every decision was about winning. He had built his entire existence around one idea. The harder he worked, the happier he would be. But success has a strange way of revealing its own limitations. At the height of his career, with millions in the bank and a name that echoed across the world, Will found himself feeling empty. The awards, the adoration, the power, it wasn't enough. No matter how much he accomplished, the finish line kept moving. His need to prove, to dominate, to be everything for everyone had exhausted him. It wasn't until he hit a breaking point, a moment of deep reflection, pain, and personal reckoning, that he finally understood the truth. Happiness isn't a trophy. It's not something you win. It's something you create within yourself. For years, Will had believed that control was the key to life, that if he worked hard enough, planned well enough, and achieved more than anyone else, he could secure happiness for himself and the people he loved. But the more he tried to orchestrate life, the more it slipped through his fingers. The real freedom came when he let go. Instead of striving for perfection, he started embracing joy. Instead of trying to control every outcome, he learned to surrender to the moment. He stopped seeing life as a competition and started experiencing it as a journey. And that, he realized, was the real lesson. Success isn't about what you achieve. It's about who you become in the process. Because at the end of the day, the money, the fame, the titles, they all fade. But peace, purpose, and self-acceptance, that's what lasts. That's what makes life truly worth living. Will Smith's final message to you. Will Smith's story isn't just about fame, fortune, or Hollywood blockbusters. It's about fear, resilience, reinvention. It's about a kid from West Philly who dared to dream. A young man who lost everything and clawed his way back. A superstar who thought he had it all, only to realize that real success isn't measured by trophies. but by inner peace. At its core, Will's journey is all of ours. We all have fears that hold us back. We all have moments where we fail, stumble, and wonder if we're enough. But the difference between those who stay down and those who rise is the choice to keep going, to bet on yourself, to risk everything for something greater. So now, it's your turn. What's the one fear that's keeping you from your next big breakthrough? What's the one risk you've been too afraid to take? Because as Will Smith says, greatness lives on the edge of destruction. If you want to truly live, you have to be willing to step into the unknown, to embrace the risk, to chase the dream. What's your biggest takeaway from Will Smith's journey? Drop it in the comments. Love this breakdown? Then don't just watch, be part of the movement. Like this video, subscribe for more life-changing book summaries. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep pushing, keep growing, and never stop believing in yourself.